Next question, how to get GF? I suppose you're referring to girlfriend. Again, I don't know. I literally don't know why you asked me this question. Okay, so suddenly there's something I recall, and this might be a good idea for you in the future. One thing that I used to do with my girlfriend, I mean my wife right now, is to play the claw machine, and I'm pretty sure that most of you know what it is. And so I decided to go online and find out how I can make a claw machine from scratch, from very simple tools. And here is a video which will guide you how to make it. The basic idea is this mechanical component and also hydraulic system. So let me explain to you briefly how the hydraulic system can help you to build the claw machine. So here is a syringe, which is one of the most important component, and you can find in maybe the medical store, maybe because parents probably will feed the medicine to the babies using the syringe. And here are some cable tie. You need to connect that with the other mechanical component like the claw itself. So then when you move the syringe, it will also move the claw as well. So it's to control whether the claw can be opened or closed. Okay, so this is something that I did as well. Unfortunately, it wasn't very sturdy, so it takes some time to do the trial and error sometimes. And let's skip for this for a bit, but I think it would be nice if you can go and check out the mechanical design. It's actually pretty awesome as well. So if you have time, you can go and check out the video full version. I'll put a link in the description below. And you can see he's trying to see whether the size will fit. And let me skip to the part where it is the most relevant to the hydraulic system. So the most important thing about the hydraulic system is you have to use liquid. So here I believe he just used water with food coloring, so it looks better. This is not blood, obviously. And so you have to have one syringe connected with another syringe, as you can see here. This is empty while the other side is filled with liquid. So people sometimes would use oil, or here for simplicity you can use water. So it doesn't really matter as long as it is liquid. It will still work, and I'll explain the working principle to you later on. So the basic idea is when you push the other side of the syringe, the water can be pushed, and that's why this syringe, you can see the handle here, will also be pushed backward also. So this is how you can control remotely along the wire, along the whole tube. So this is basically the idea of the hydraulic system, and now we just have to wire it. Okay, and each of these syringe will be controlling for another 4 syringe inside the machine. And as you know, if you have played that before, you can control going forward, backward, left and right, and up and down. So there are 3 axes, and also the one that is controlling the claw, whether it's open or not. So that's why there are 4 syringes in total. So this is what you can make maybe in the future if you want to simply try to make someone happy. You can go to try making this one out. Alright, it's again very easy. I tried that. Although it wasn't really sturdy, once again, I recommend you to use cardboard like this video. I use something that is not like styrofoam board, I think, and it wasn't very sturdy enough. I think cardboard will be much better. And try to build this bigger, so that you can have more room for some sort of slack and the tiny movement in the room. Otherwise, it won't be that fun if you build that small, because you can't move that much. So yeah, that's a future advice for you. The hydraulic system was not only applicable to the claw machine, it was also widely used for different purposes. Probably you have seen it before, or you may even use it before. Let me give you some example. This is a crane which you may probably find in the construction site, and just like the claw machine, it helps the movement of the crane by going up, down, or maybe extend or retract using the hydraulic system. Okay, and the hydraulic system is actually mainly here, and it's hidden, of course, inside the machine. And so this piston is just working same as the syringe just now. Inside there are some oil in it to transfer the pressure, and it will help you to make the movement. The other example would be the plane, which you probably have taken somewhere in your lifetime, probably not this year. But then for the control of the plane, think about the pilot only have to press one button to control the flap or control the wing, the airfoil, so that it can make a turn or something. And obviously that button push is not going to cause like a lot of force, right? You just have to push a button easily and the whole thing would work by itself. So one of the basic idea is it would need to have a hydraulic system to move those very heavy mechanical components. So this is the wiring of it. So in case if you want to know, you can go and search more about it. It's of course quite complicated. Let me show you a very simple example that you may have used before. That is bicycle. If you have ever ride on bicycle before, you probably have to brake certain time, right, before you get off safely. And in fact, the braking system are usually come with the hydraulic system. If you think about your experience, you'll find out there's always a kind of like a string or a wire connected to the brake, right, from here, all right, and then connected to the wheel itself. In fact, it's not connected to the wheel; it's connected to the braking disc. This is the braking disc, and so when you press the handle, which is for braking, obviously, that would transfer the pressure, the force and the pressure to the other side, which here is a brake, right? It's a braking pad we call, which give you a lot of friction. So it will kind of squeeze onto this braking disc and to stop it from spinning. And obviously this braking disc is connected with the wheel itself. So that's how it stops the wheel from turning. So all thanks to hydraulic system, you can brake the bicycle using the handle. Otherwise, I don't know how you can brake it. You can either put your legs on the ground to kind of drag it, or you can, I don't know, put your hand on the wheel, which again is very dangerous and stupid. So using this can help us to brake the bicycle easily. In fact, the hydraulic system in the DIY claw machine which I showed you earlier was a simplified version. Not because it's made of plastic simply, it's more about the size of the syringe itself. The syringe that are connected together earlier in that video was the same size. And so normally when you build a machine, even the bicycle example I showed you, the syringe size, or more precisely the piston size, is going to be different on each side. The handle one and the one that is near the brake is going to be different. So let me explain to you further on the working principle. Here's a diagram which shows you the usual hydraulic system which you can find on the second syringe, the output syringe. The area is much bigger, and of course the size itself is much bigger also, while the input one is much smaller. So this is very commonly seen and applicable to those examples that I mentioned for the crane, aeroplane, and also even the bicycle as well. Let's look at how it works in detail. So first of all, let's not forget we have to fill the liquid inside the hydraulic system instead of gas. Okay, the main reason is because liquid are incompressible. That means you cannot compress them. Well, think about this. Have you ever compressed any liquid before? You cannot, because this is a property of the liquid itself. Unlike another kind, which is the gas. For gas, you can compress them. If you have heard about compressed gas, or simply when you have a basketball, you try to pump the air in, right? At the end, you can pump more and more, and it become more, not that elastic at the end because there are more air filled in inside. So gas could be compressed while liquid cannot. And in case you wonder why we can compress gas but not liquid, then you have to think about the particle structure. For gas, they are much more separated from each other, and therefore there are space between them, and you can make it smaller by adding more pressure towards them. And that's why this is not a good thing for applying onto the hydraulic system. I'll show you why. So for liquid, because it is incompressible, whenever we try to exert a force right here, down here, then it will create a pressure that you learned earlier, P equals to F over A. And so this pressure will be transmitted directly to the other side, and there will be no reduction of pressure because they cannot be compressed, and therefore they just press, they just transfer the pressure to the other side. Just imagine you have a lot of billy balls here along the hydraulic system. So what you do is once you push these down, then they just have to go somewhere else. They can't just say, oh, let's reduce the space between them, because they are closely packed already for the liquid. And that's why they just have to squeeze out from the other side of the piston. So again, they won't be building up pressure like the gas. So again, gas won't work because they will build up the pressure, and instead of moving the piston on the other side. And so in this case, we will find out the pressure, since they got transmitted, the pressure on each side is going to be the same. And this is the most important thing. If you can accept this, then we can use the idea of the pressure equation, which you learned earlier. So for the pressure on the left hand side, we call it P1, or maybe I can write here P1. Pressure on the other side, we call it P2, but then in fact they are the same pressure, because again they have to transmit it, because liquid are incompressible. And so we can apply the equation F over A on each side, but then the F and A are corresponding to their own force and also their own area. So that's why I said it is very important to get the second syringe or second piston to be of a greater area, because in this case we can rearrange it so that it becomes F1 over F2, A1 over A2. And so since the area ratio is fixed, where you will find in this picture, A2 is going to be greater than A1. So let's say the ratio between them is 1 to 3, let's say. Okay, I'm just making it up. So let's say this area is have a unit of 1, this area has a unit of 3, so the ratio is 3 to 1 or 1 to 3. And so in this case, when you try to exert a force, for example, that is 100 Newton, then as a result of this relationship, the force on the other side that you will obtain is going to be 300 Newton because of the ratio of the area itself. So that's why it is very applicable and useful for controlling the mechanical component and also making the force bigger. Imagine if you are controlling the crane in the construction site, you don't expect your force can lift up a heavy object, right? You use the machine to lift up the heavy object. So when you are operating it, you don't have to have that great force, but then eventually it would help you to generate a great force to pick up the component that you want to have. Okay, and so here we can put down the side with greater area will have a greater force, vice versa. Of course, if you reverse the whole setup so that A1 is going to be greater than A2, then you kind of mess up. Alright, like this guy, Unlucky Brian, installed in opposite direction, and so it will become worse. You will input 100 Newton and getting 33 Newton instead if you are keeping this ratio, but then it's reversed. So that will be quite stupid and not applicable in your situation. Lastly, for the name of this kind of system which would give you bigger force, we simply call it as force multiplier. Okay, so now let's get yourself a practice. Pause the video and try this question.
A few moments later.
Okay, so here you should find a very standard hydraulic system which you have F1, F2 and also the area. So this should be A1 I should call, so right here. And it said the force is 90 Newton, find out the pressure. So pressure equal to force over area, and so that's the equation you should write down, 90 over 4.8. However, be careful, this is in cm square, and so you can either change it back to meter square, or you can keep the unit as Newton cm square, which is something that I would prefer to do. Oh, no, slash. Okay, almost wrong. So you don't have to convert it back to meter square, and it will save your time and also keep yourself away from the careless mistakes. So this is going to be acceptable also in the exam. So 90 divide 4.8 is going to be 18.75. Okay, or I should write here and then run it to 19, so about 19 Newton per cm square. Part B is asking you the pressure on Y is the same as X, so why would the force be greater? So this is simply recalling what you have just learned earlier in this video, and so what you have to say is Px equal to Py. Of course, you should convert these into a sentence, and therefore you have Fx over Ax equals to Fy over Ay, and that would show you that the area ratio will be the same as the force ratio. And so the most important thing is, because area on the y side is going to be greater than x, right, by looking at the diagram, and therefore the force on the y side is also going to be bigger than x. No calculation involved because you cannot calculate. They didn't give you any figures. You have to explain this way. Part C, it asks you why y piston will move a smaller distance than x. Okay, this is a very good question. We haven't talked about it before, but what you have to think about it is, because when you push in the first piston on x side, you push for a certain volume, okay, and for a certain distance. All right, let's say this is x, all right, with a volume of Vx, and similarly, this volume, since you have pushed it, then it will be transferred to y side, so it will take up extra volume because this piston is going to move back. So that there will be a volume which is supposed to be the same, but I'll call it Vy. They will be the same, and so for this distance, let me call it y. And if you think about it, the volume, since they have to be the same, and therefore with the smaller area it will be a greater distance, or with a greater area it will be a shorter distance, because this is a cylinder and the volume for finding out the cylinder is base area AX times the distance. Well, let's call it dx, can we? Dx and dy for a distance, so it's easier to read, would equal to area on the y side times the distance that piston y moved. And again, because of the ratio of the area AX over AY, then you have dy over dx. In this case, kind of reverse. So the one with greater area will actually move less. So this is something that you can try to convert into a sentences and write down here. Lastly, suggest why the braking system does not work properly if there are bubbles of air in the oil. So again, air is compressible, so that is something that we mentioned. All right, and so it will reduce the pressure when we try to push on the X side, and therefore not all the pressure will be transferred. Because of question C, I think we all should make a better notes back there. So like I said, the system I introduced to you with the first piston smaller than the second piston is called the force multiplier, and this is the advantage. However, as we discussed, the disadvantage of this is it will reduce the distance that you can move in the second piston because of the fixed volume issue, right? For example, even if you got a greater force on the other side, you may have moved here for like 3 cm, but then on the other side you could only move for 1 cm. So that is the drawback of this system. And that is to say, for the system that is the other way around, like what I mentioned earlier for this unlucky Brian, that if you have the first piston to be much bigger than the second one, then the whole thing will be opposite. What you get is you will have as advantages will be having a greater distance or multiplying the distance that you can move. But then again, the disadvantage, as we said earlier, is that it will reduce the force that you can have on the second piston. And in fact, this system will be called as distance multiplier. All right, we are not very creative and naming stuff. So distance multiplier. So the disadvantage is, yeah, you get more distance, but you have less force. Just like the old Chinese saying that you cannot get the fish and the bear paw at the same time. That means you cannot just have all the good stuff in your life. If you want to be good at something, there's usually a price for it. So take your side and make your choice. Lastly, here is the answer from the official marking scheme. If you like to, you can pause the video and check your answer again. That is all for the video. So you have learned about the physics behind the hydraulic system. You have learned about how to make a claw machine for your future girlfriend or boyfriend. And also you have learned about the life advice from me. If you like this video, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you again in the next video. Bye.